Family is everything, they always say. But what happens when the person you welcomed into your family betrays your trust in the most financially devastating way? I'm Meredith Sawyer, a 58-year-old widow from Portland. I thought I was helping. My son and daughter-in-law threw a rough patch by letting them stay with me. Instead, I discovered $17,000 in unauthorized charges on my credit card, all while my daughter-in-law Amber was supposedly visiting her sick aunt. What followed was a roller coaster of emotions, confrontations, and ultimately, a legal battle that tore our family apart. This is the story of how I learned the hard way that sometimes blood isn't thicker than water, and how I fought back. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from, and if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. It all started 3 months ago when my son Tyler called me in tears. He and his wife Amber had been evicted from their apartment after Tyler lost his job at the tech startup where he'd worked for the past 5 years. The company had gone under without warning, leaving dozens of employees scrambling for new positions in an already saturated market. "Mom, I hate to ask this, but could we stay with you for a little while? Just until I find something new?" Tyler's voice cracked over the phone. "Amber's job at the salon barely covers our car payments, and we've got nowhere else to go." My heart broke for him. Since losing my husband Richard to cancer 2 years ago, the 4-bedroom house had felt painfully empty. The idea of having company, especially family, seemed like a blessing rather than an imposition. "Of course you can stay, honey," I assured him. "The guest room is already made up, and there's plenty of space for both of you." What I didn't say was how lonely I'd been. My friends were all busy with their own lives, traveling with their husbands, spending time with grandchildren, or pursuing hobbies they'd put off during their working years. Meanwhile, I was still adjusting to life without Richard, rattling around in a house full of memories, but empty of voices. Tyler and Amber arrived the following weekend with 4 suitcases and profuse thanks. At 32, my son still had that boyish charm that had gotten him out of trouble throughout his childhood. Amber, 5 years his junior, was as beautiful as ever with her perfectly highlighted blonde hair and impeccable makeup, though I noticed she seemed more reserved than usual. "Thank you so much, Meredith," she said, hugging me briefly before disappearing upstairs with her designer luggage. "You're literally saving our lives." The first few weeks went smoothly enough. Tyler spent most days hunched over his laptop, applying for jobs and networking on LinkedIn. I enjoyed cooking for more than just myself again, and we fell into a comfortable routine of family dinners and occasional movie nights. Amber was often absent, working long shifts at the upscale salon downtown where she styled hair for Portland's elite. One evening over dinner, Tyler shared some promising news. "I've got a second interview at Collins Tech next week," he announced, reaching for the salad. "The salary would be even better than my last position." "That's wonderful," I exclaimed, genuinely thrilled. Financial independence had always been important to my son, and I knew how much the current situation was weighing on him. Amber's reaction was more subdued. "That's great, babe," she said, scrolling through her phone. "Though I was thinking maybe we should consider moving to Seattle or San Francisco. There are way more opportunities in bigger cities." Tyler frowned. "We've talked about this, Amber. My mom's here, our friends are here, and we're broke here," she interrupted, finally looking up from her screen. "No offense, Meredith, but we can't live with you forever." "None taken," I assured her, though something in her tone made me uncomfortable. "You're both welcome to stay as long as needed, but I understand wanting your own space again." The conversation moved on, but I noticed a new tension between them. Later that night, I overheard them arguing in hushed tones behind their closed door. "You're not even trying to understand my perspective," Amber hissed. "I'm suffocating in this city, in this house." "We agreed to stay in Portland," Tyler responded firmly, "and my mom has been nothing but generous." Your mom, Amber mimicked. I'm so sick of everything revolving around what your mom wants. I tiptoed back to my bedroom, my heart heavy. I'd always sensed Amber viewed me as competition, for Tyler's attention rather than family, but I'd hoped our current living arrangement might bridge that gap. Clearly, I was wrong. The next morning, Amber announced she'd received a call from her Aunt Diana in Phoenix. "She's really sick, pneumonia or something," she explained, sipping the coffee I'd made. "I should go check on her. She doesn't have anyone else." "Of course you should go," Tyler agreed immediately. "How long do you think you'll be gone?" Amber shrugged. "A week, maybe 2? I already talked to the salon and they're giving me the time off. I can use some of my savings for the flight." Something about the situation felt off to me. I'd never heard Amber mention this aunt before, but it wasn't my place to question her family relationships. Tyler drove her to the airport the next day, and our household settled into a new, quieter rhythm. With Amber gone, Tyler and I fell back into the easy relationship we'd had before his marriage. We cooked together, played board games in the evenings, and had long conversations about everything and nothing. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed our connection until it was temporarily restored. "Mom, I really appreciate you taking us in," Tyler said one night as we cleaned up after dinner. "I know it's not ideal, especially with Amber." "Especially with Amber what?" I prompted when he trailed off. He sighed, setting down the dish towel. "She's just struggling right now. She had all these plans for our life together, and none of them involved moving in with my mother at 32. "I understand," I said, though part of me wanted to point out that many people had to adjust their expectations when faced with financial hardship. "Things will look up once you find a new job," Tyler nodded, though he didn't look convinced. "I hope so. The interview at Collins went well, but they're still talking to other candidates." 3 days later, I received an email alert from my credit card company about unusual activity on my account. Thinking it was a routine notification, I almost deleted it until I noticed the amount: $3,700 at a luxury resort in Scottsdale, Arizona. My stomach dropped. I immediately logged into my account and discovered not just one charge, but several more. $2,200 at Nordstrom, $1,800 at Saks Fifth Avenue, $950 at a spa, and multiple restaurant charges ranging from $200 to $500. In total, nearly $17,000 had been charged to my card in just 4 days. I frantically called the credit card company to report fraud, my hands shaking as I navigated the automated system. "Mrs. Sawyer, can you confirm when you last had possession of your physical card?" the fraud department representative asked. "It's in my wallet," I replied, reaching for my purse. But when I checked, the card wasn't there. I dumped everything onto the kitchen table, searching desperately through old receipts, loose change, and crumpled tissues. Nothing. "I can't find it," I admitted, panic rising in my throat. "But it has to be here somewhere. I haven't left the house except to go grocery shopping." According to our records, these charges were made in person in Arizona, the representative explained. The chip was present for each transaction, and someone entered the correct PIN. Arizona, where Amber had gone to visit her supposedly sick aunt. "I need to call you back," I said abruptly, ending the call. With trembling fingers, I dialed Tyler's number. He was at a job fair downtown and answered on the second ring. "Mom, everything okay?" "Tyler, I need you to be honest with me," I began, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Did Amber take my credit card to Arizona?" "What? No, of course not," he responded immediately. "Why would you ask that?" I explained about the charges, each word more painful than the last. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "It has to be a mistake," Tyler finally said, though he sounded less certain. "Amber wouldn't do that. Maybe your card got cloned or something." "The physical card is missing, Tyler. And the PIN was used. I took a deep breath. Is there an Aunt Diana in Phoenix? Another lengthy pause. I've never actually met any of Amber's extended family, he admitted. She doesn't talk about them much. I need Amber's number in Arizona, I insisted. Right now. Mom, let me handle this, Tyler pleaded. I'll call her and sort it out. There has to be an explanation. I wanted to trust my son, but the evidence was damning. You have 1 hour to get answers, or I'm calling the police to report the theft. That hour was the longest of my life. I paced the house, checking my phone obsessively and fighting back tears of anger and betrayal. When Tyler finally called back, his voice was hollow. She's not answering her phone, he said. I've called 8 times and sent a dozen texts. Then, I'm calling the police, I decided. Mom, please, Tyler begged. Give her until tomorrow. Maybe there's a perfectly reasonable explanation. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now back to where we left off. Against my better judgment, I agreed to wait until morning. But I immediately contacted my credit card company again, this time to freeze the account and dispute the charges. The customer service agent was sympathetic, but warned me that because the card was used by a family member, even one who didn't have authorization, recovery might be complicated. In these situations, credit card companies often consider it a civil matter rather than fraud, she explained gently, especially when the cardholder and user live together. I barely slept that night, my mind cycling through scenarios, each worse than the last. How could Amber do this? Had she been planning it all along? Was Tyler somehow involved? The thought made me sick, but I couldn't dismiss it entirely. Morning came with no word from Amber. Tyler looked as though he hadn't slept either, his eyes red-rimmed and his shoulders slumped. I'm going to call my lawyer, I announced over untouched cups of coffee. This isn't just about the money, Tyler. It's about trust. Could you wait just a little longer? He pleaded. She'll call back. But Amber didn't call back, not that day, or the next. What we received instead was a series of new charges attempting to hit my frozen credit card. Additional hotel nights, more shopping, a sunset helicopter tour of the Grand Canyon. Each declined transaction notification felt like a slap in the face. On the 3rd day, I contacted Patricia Henderson, the attorney who had handled Richard's estate. She listened carefully to my situation, taking detailed notes. You have several options, Patricia explained. We can file a police report for theft, send a formal demand letter for repayment, or potentially pursue civil litigation. Given the amount involved and the family relationship, this is a delicate situation. I want it all, I said firmly. I want the police report filed today, and I want to pursue every legal avenue available to recover my money. Patricia nodded, her expression sympathetic but professional. I should warn you that involving law enforcement could permanently damage your relationship with your son and daughter-in-law. She already damaged that when she stole from me, I replied, though my voice cracked. And Tyler, he needs to understand the seriousness of what's happened. When I returned home that afternoon, Tyler was waiting for me in the living room, his expression grim. Amber finally called, he said, his voice flat. She admits taking the card but says it was a misunderstanding. She thought you'd offered to help us financially and assumed she could use it for a short vacation to clear her head about our situation. I stared at him incredulously. A $17,000 misunderstanding? Tyler, that's absurd and you know it. She's coming home tomorrow, he continued as if I hadn't spoken. She says she'll explain everything and figure out a way to pay you back. It's too late for explanations, I said, placing my purse on the coffee table and removing the police report receipt. I've already filed charges. Tyler's face was drained of color. You did what? I reported the theft to the police and disputed the charges with my credit card company. My lawyer is also preparing a civil suit to recover damages. Mom! Tyler exploded, jumping to his feet. How could you do that without talking to me first? She's my wife. And I'm your mother, I countered, struggling to stay calm. The mother who took you both in when you had nowhere else to go. The mother whose kindness Amber repaid by stealing $17,000 for a luxury vacation while you were here worrying about finding a job. Tyler's expression hardened in a way I'd never seen before. If you go through with this, if you press charges against Amber, we're done. Do you understand? You'll lose me forever. The ultimatum hung in the air between us, heavy with decades of love and the unbearable weight of present betrayal. I gazed at my son, my only child, my heart walking around outside my body, and felt a resolve strengthen within me. I love you more than anything in this world, Tyler, I said quietly. But I will not be stolen from, lied to, and manipulated, even by my family. Especially my family. Tyler grabbed his keys from the hook by the door. I need some air, he muttered, slamming the door behind him. Alone in the sudden silence, I sank onto the couch and finally allowed myself to cry. For the money? Yes, but more for the fracturing family bonds that might never be repaired. As the evening shadows lengthened across my living room floor, I wondered if standing up for myself would cost me the only family I had left. But sometimes, principles have to matter more than peace. Sometimes love means setting boundaries rather than enabling destructive behavior. And sometimes, the hardest battles are the ones we fight against the people we love most. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring when Amber returned, or how this conflict would ultimately resolve. But sitting there in my quiet house, surrounded by photographs of happier times, I made a promise to myself. I would face whatever came next with the same strength and dignity that had carried me through widowhood. Because if there's one thing I've learned in my 58 years, it's that you can't control how others treat you, only how you respond. And I was done being a doormat. The next morning arrived with a suffocating tension hanging over the house. Tyler had returned late, the previous night, but went straight to the guest room without a word. I heard him moving around before dawn, his footsteps heavy above my bedroom. I was sitting at the kitchen island nursing my second cup of coffee when the doorbell rang at precisely 9:30 a.m. My stomach twisted into knots as I walked to answer it, unsure whether I was more afraid of seeing Amber or not seeing her at all. She stood on my porch, looking nothing like the glamorous, confident woman who'd left a week earlier. Her designer sunglasses couldn't quite hide her puffy eyes, and her typically perfect hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. Behind her, Tyler hovered protectively, his jaw set in a hard line. "May we come in?" he asked formally, as if he hadn't been living under my roof for the past 3 months. I stepped aside wordlessly, leading them to the living room where the three of us sat in a triangle of uncomfortable silence. The ticking of the grandfather clock that had belonged to Richard's parents seemed unnaturally loud. "I made a terrible mistake," Amber finally began, removing her sunglasses to reveal red-rimmed eyes. "I don't expect you to forgive me, Meredith, but I need you to understand what happened." I folded my hands in my lap, waiting. Part of me wanted to believe there was a reasonable explanation, something that would make sense of this nightmare. "I've been struggling with depression since Tyler lost his job," she continued, her voice small. "Everything we worked for was suddenly gone. Our apartment, our plans for starting a family, the life we were building, all of it vanished overnight." Tyler reached over to squeeze her hand supportively. "We should have told you she was seeing a therapist," he added. But Amber was embarrassed. "The therapist suggested I needed a break, some time to reset," Amber explained. "When I saw your credit card in the bathroom one morning, you'd left it on the counter after ordering those gardening supplies online, I just snapped. I convinced myself I deserved a few days of escape, that you wouldn't miss the money since, You rarely use that particular card. And a sick aunt in Phoenix? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Amber had the decency to look ashamed. A complete lie. I'm sorry. $17,000 isn't a few days of escape, I pointed out. It's grand theft. I know, she whispered, tears spilling onto her cheeks. I kept telling myself just one more nice dinner, just one more spa treatment, and then it spiraled out of control. I've never done anything like this before, I swear. Tyler leaned forward, his expression earnest. Mom, Amber has a plan to pay you back every cent. She's already talked to her parents, and they're going to help with the initial payment. And I've accepted a management position at the salon, Amber added quickly. It's a significant raise. Between that and Tyler's new job prospect? You filed charges against my wife, Tyler interrupted, his voice hardening. Do you have any idea what that could do to her career? To our future? Do you have any idea what $17,000 means to me? I countered. That's 6 months of mortgage payments. That's the money I was saving for maintenance on this 30-year-old house. That's security I've worked my entire life to build. And we'll replace it, Amber insisted. Every penny, with interest. Please, Meredith. I made a horrible mistake, but don't ruin my life over it. I studied them both, these two people I had welcomed into my home. Amber looked genuinely remorseful, but something about her tearful confession felt rehearsed, calculated to elicit maximum sympathy. And Tyler, my son who had always had a moral compass as steady as his father's, was now asking me to overlook a felony because family ties should trump justice. I need to think, I said finally, rising from my chair. And I need to speak with my lawyer about what dropping the charges would entail. Thank you, Amber breathed, as if I'd already agreed. You won't regret giving me this second chance. I haven't given you anything yet, I clarified. I'll let you know my decision by the end of the day. After they left, Tyler mentioning something about staying at a friend's place until things cooled down, I called Patricia Henderson. They're offering full repayment, I explained after recounting their visit. What are my options if I decide to drop the charges? Patricia was thoughtfully silent for a moment. We could draw up a formal repayment agreement that would be legally binding, she suggested. But Meredith, I have to caution you, if they're already under financial strain, the likelihood of receiving the full $17,000 is questionable at best. And if I don't drop the charges? The police investigation will continue. Given the evidence, Amber would likely face criminal prosecution for credit card fraud and grand theft. She could be looking at fines and potentially jail time, depending on her prior record. The weight of this decision pressed down on me. Was I prepared to be responsible for sending my daughter-in-law to jail? Could my relationship with Tyler ever recover if I did? There's something else to consider, Patricia continued when I didn't respond. Your credit card company might be more willing to absorb the loss if they see you're pursuing criminal charges. Some policies have provisions for fraud that don't require prosecution of family members, but it varies by company. After ending the call, I walked through my empty house, pausing at the family photographs that lined the hallway. Tyler as a gap-toothed 7-year-old, proudly holding up his first caught fish. Tyler at his high school graduation, with Richard and me flanking him, our faces shining with pride. Tyler and Amber on their wedding day 3 years ago, looking impossibly young and happy. I reached for that last frame, studying Amber's beaming face. Had there been signs even then that she was capable of this level of deception? Or had desperation truly driven her to an uncharacteristic act of theft? By late afternoon, I'd made my decision. I texted Tyler asking him and Amber to return for dinner at 6 p.m. Then I made 3 more phone calls, one to my credit card company, one to Officer Jenkins who had taken my police report, and one to an unexpected ally I hadn't considered until now. At exactly 6 p.m., Tyler and Amber arrived, both looking apprehensive but hopeful. I'd prepared Richard's famous lasagna, always Tyler's favorite, and set the dining room table as if this were any normal family dinner. "Before we eat," I said after they'd settled into their chairs, "I want to share my decision with you both." Tyler reached for Amber's hand under the table, their fingers interlocking in a white-knuckled grip. "I've spoken extensively with my credit card company," I began. "Because the card was taken from my home by someone living here, they initially classified this as a family dispute rather than fraud, which complicated my claim." "Mom," Tyler started, but I held up my hand. "Please let me finish. After reviewing all my options, I've decided on a course of action that I believe is fair to everyone involved." I pulled out a thick manila envelope from the sideboard drawer and placed it on the table between us. Inside this envelope is a formal agreement drawn up by my lawyer. It stipulates that Amber will repay the full $17,000 plus 5% interest over the next 3 years. Payments will be made directly to a special account set up for this purpose, with the first payment of $3,000 due immediately as a show of good faith. Amber nodded rapidly. "That's completely reasonable. My parents can wire the initial payment tomorrow." "There's more," I continued. "I've also decided not to withdraw the police report." Their faces fell in perfect synchronization. "However," I added, before they could protest, "I've spoken with Officer Jenkins and explained that while I want the theft documented officially, I'm not interested in pursuing criminal charges at this time, provided the repayment agreement is honored without fail." "Thank you," Amber whispered, tears welling in her eyes again. "I promise you won't regret this." "I'm not finished," I said, my voice firm. "There's one more condition." They waited, tension visible in their rigid postures. "You need to find your own place to live, immediately." Tyler's expression hardened. "Mom, we can't afford—" "Actually, you can," I interrupted, reaching back into the sideboard for a second envelope. "I spoke with Gregory Thompson at Collins Tech this afternoon. He was quite surprised to hear from me, especially since he'd left 3 messages for you yesterday offering you the position you interviewed for." Tyler's face was drained of color. "You called my potential employer?" I did. "And do you know what I discovered? The job has been available to you for 3 days, but you never returned their calls. Greg is an old friend of your father's, so—" He was candid with me about the details. $95,000 base salary plus benefits, starting next Monday. More than enough for you and Amber to afford your own apartment. "I was going to tell you," Tyler mumbled, not meeting my eyes. "With everything happening with Amber, I just forgot to mention a life-changing job offer," I finished for him. "Or were you hoping I'd feel so sorry for your financial situation that I'd drop the whole credit card matter?" The flash of guilt across both their faces told me everything I needed to know. "The position is still yours if you want it," I continued evenly. "Greg's holding it until tomorrow morning, and I've taken the liberty of calling Madison Estates. They have a 2-bedroom, available for immediate move-in, first month's rent waived as a special promotion." I pushed the second envelope toward them. "Here's a check for $2,000 to cover the security deposit. Consider it my investment in your fresh start, away from my home and my credit cards." A heavy silence fell over the dining room. The lasagna sat untouched, steam no longer rising from its surface. "You've had this all planned out," Tyler finally said, his voice a mixture of resentment and reluctant admiration. "I've had 6 hours to think about what's best for all of us," I corrected him. "This solution allows Amber to avoid a criminal record, gives you both a fresh financial start, and ensures I'll eventually be repaid for what was stolen. Most importantly, it gives us all some much-needed space to rebuild trust." Amber picked up the repayment agreement with trembling fingers. "And if we sign this and move out, you'll really tell the police not to press charges?" "I'll inform them that I'm pursuing civil rather than criminal remedies," I clarified. "But understand this. If a single payment is missed, if there's any further breach of trust, I will not hesitate to pursue every legal option available to me." They exchanged glances, having one of those silent conversations that married couples develop. Finally, Tyler nodded. "We'll sign it," he said. "And I'll call Greg first thing in the morning about the job." "Good," I replied, finally allowing myself to relax slightly. "Now, shall we eat before the lasagna gets cold?" The meal that followed was awkward but civil. We carefully avoided discussing the elephant in the room, instead making stilted small talk about the spring weather and local news. Afterward, Tyler and Amber retreated to the guest room, where I could hear them talking in hushed tones late into the night. By noon the following day, Tyler had accepted the position at Collins Tech, and Amber had submitted the rental application for Madison Estates. Her parents wired the initial $3,000 payment directly to the special account my lawyer had established. The formal agreement was signed by all parties and notarized at Patricia's office. 3 days later, I stood in my driveway, watching Tyler load the last of their suitcases into his car. Amber waited in the passenger seat, her oversized sunglasses firmly in place despite the cloudy day. "I'm sorry it came to this," Tyler said quietly as he closed the trunk. "I should have been more honest with you about everything." "Yes, you should have," I agreed, but without rancor. "Dishonesty doesn't solve problems. It only postpones consequences." He nodded, looking more like the son I raised than he had in weeks. "I know you think I'm choosing Amber over you, but it's not that simple. She needs help, Mom. Professional help. And I need to be there for her through that process." "I understand standing by your spouse," I said, thinking of the many times Richard and I had weathered storms together. "But supporting someone doesn't mean enabling destructive behavior." "I know," he acknowledged. "And for what it's worth, I think your solution was fair. Tough, but fair." I reached out to embrace him, relieved when he didn't pull away. "Your father would be proud of you for accepting accountability," I whispered. "That job at Collins is a fresh start. Don't waste it." "We won't," he promised, squeezing me tightly before stepping back. "Can I call you in a few weeks? Maybe we could have lunch or something." "I'd like that," I said, meaning it despite everything. As their car disappeared down the street, I felt a complex mixture of emotions: sadness for the fractures in our family, relief that a resolution had been reached, and a quiet pride in standing up for myself even when it was painful. Back inside, I wandered through the suddenly empty house, straightening picture frames and gathering mail that had accumulated during the crisis. Among the bills and advertisements was a thick cream-colored envelope with the Collins Tech logo embossed in the corner. Curious, I opened it to find a handwritten note from Gregory Thompson. "More complicated than discovering your soon-to-be ex-wife is living in a luxury condo instead of the apartment I helped you secure," I challenged myself. His shocked expression told me he hadn't known that particular detail. "What are you talking about?" "Amber's staying with an old friend from beauty school until we sort out the divorce. Some small place in the southeast." "That small place is a $750,000 condo overlooking the waterfront," I informed him. "And that old friend is Laura Ingram, Regional Director for Cascade Cosmetics." Tyler's face registered genuine confusion. "That can't be right. Amber said she was crashing on her friend's couch to save money for the divorce attorney." "Well, unless there are two Amber Sawyers with the same oversized sunglasses posting cozy rooftop cocktail photos with Laura Ingram, your wife has been less than truthful." I pulled out my phone and showed him the social media posts I'd discovered. With each swipe, Tyler's expression darkened. "I don't understand," he muttered. "How could she afford—" He stopped abruptly, realization dawning. "The salon promotion. It wasn't real, was it?" "I'm starting to think very little about Amber being real," I said gently. Tyler abruptly stood and walked to the window, his back rigid with tension. When he finally turned to face me, his expression had transformed from confused to determined. "I need to tell you something, Mom. Something I should have said weeks ago." He took a deep breath. Amber wasn't alone in Arizona. She went with Laura. They've been having an affair for months. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. "Oh, Tyler." "It started before I lost my job," he continued, words tumbling out as if a dam had broken. "I found messages on her phone back in January but convinced myself it was nothing serious. Then, when we got evicted and had to move in with you, things got worse. She started staying out later, making excuses about salon events. And the credit card theft. That trip was supposed to be their romantic getaway," Tyler admitted, his voice hollow. "Laura was paying for her half, but Amber couldn't afford it. When she saw your card, she took it impulsively. She never expected you'd notice so quickly." "So, all these repayments, the supposed parental support—" "The first payment really did come from her parents," Tyler explained. "They were horrified when I told them what she'd done, but the rest has been coming from me, every penny of it." I stared at him, trying to process this new layer of deception. "You've been making the payments for her? Why not tell me the truth?" "Because I was ashamed," he confessed, eyes glistening. "Not just of her actions, but of mine. I should have seen what was happening. I should have been honest with you from the beginning instead of trying to protect her. And now I'm done protecting her," Tyler said firmly. "The divorce papers are filed. I've been working with a lawyer to make sure she takes full responsibility for the credit card debt in the settlement." He moved back to the table, reaching for my hands. "I'm so sorry, Mom, for everything. I've been an idiot." Despite all the hurt and betrayal, my heart ached for my son. "You're not an idiot, Tyler. You're just someone who wanted to believe in the person you loved. There's no shame in that." "There is when that person has been manipulating everyone around her," he countered bitterly, "including you." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of all these revelations settling between us. "What happens now?" I finally asked. "Now we stop pretending," Tyler decided. "I'll call Patricia this afternoon and explain everything. We'll restructure the repayment agreement to come directly from me until the divorce is finalized. After that, I'll make sure. The settlement includes provisions for Amber to take over the remaining payments. And your living situation? Are you still at Madison Estates?" He nodded. "It's just me now, which is actually a relief. The place feels more like home without her constant complaints about how small it is." As we walked to the elevator together, Tyler seemed lighter somehow, as if unburdening himself of these secrets had physically changed him. "Would you still be up for dinner this week?" he asked hesitantly. "Maybe Thursday? I could cook at my place for a change." "I'd like that," I said, squeezing his arm. "And Tyler, thank you for finally telling me the truth. No more secrets," he promised solemnly. The next day, Patricia Henderson arranged an emergency meeting with both Tyler and me. The three of us sat in her tastefully appointed office as she outlined our legal options. "Given these new circumstances, we have grounds to revise the original agreement," she explained. "Tyler's assumption of financial responsibility in the interim is commendable, but doesn't release Amber from her legal obligations." "I just want this mess behind us," Tyler said wearily. "Whatever it takes." Patricia turned to her computer and pulled up a document. "I've drafted a new agreement that acknowledges the payments made thus far and outlines a clear transfer of responsibility to Amber following the divorce settlement. Additionally, I've included language that would allow us to pursue criminal charges if she defaults after the transfer." "Will a judge enforce that in the divorce?" I asked, skeptical. "With the original police report and evidence of her recent lifestyle, we have a strong case," Patricia assured me. "However, there's another approach we might consider." "Which is?" Tyler prompted. "Confrontation," Patricia said simply. "Sometimes the most effective strategy is the most direct one. Let Amber know we're aware of her deception and give her an opportunity to make it right before we escalate matters legally." 3 days later, we implemented Patricia's suggestion in the form of a carefully orchestrated meeting at her office. Amber arrived alone, wearing an expression of practiced innocence that faltered when she saw both Tyler and me waiting with Patricia. "What's going on?" she asked, clutching her designer handbag, a recent purchase I noted with irritation. "Please, sit down," Patricia directed professionally. "We've called this meeting to discuss some concerning developments regarding your repayment agreement with Meredith." Amber perched nervously on the edge of her chair. "I don't understand. The payments have all been made on time." "Yes, by Tyler," I pointed out. "Not by you or your parents as promised." Her eyes darted to Tyler, who met her gaze steadily. "You told them?" "No more secrets, Amber," he said quietly. "No more lies." Patricia slid a folder across the desk. "These are photos from Laura Ingram's social media accounts showing your current living arrangements at lakeside luxury condominiums. Not exactly the financial hardship you've been claiming." "And these," she continued, presenting another folder, "are printouts of recent purchases made in your name. A $200 handbag, $800 shoes, and a $3,000 weekender trip to Napa Valley with Ms. Ingram." Amber's composure cracked. "You've been spying on me?" "We've been verifying information relevant to a legal agreement you signed," Patricia corrected. "An agreement you've been violating in spirit, if not in letter." "What do you want from me?" Amber demanded, looking trapped. "Honesty, for starters," I replied, "and a genuine commitment to making this right." Patricia outlined the new agreement we'd prepared, emphasizing the consequences of non-compliance. As Amber listened, her expression shifted from defiance to calculation to reluctant acceptance. "Fine," she finally agreed. "I'll sign your updated agreement, but I want something in return." "You're hardly in a position to make demands," Tyler pointed out. "I want a clean break," Amber insisted. "Once the divorce is final and I've taken over the payments, I don't want to hear from either of you ever again. No contact, no check-ins, nothing." Tyler and I exchanged glances before I nodded. "Agreed." As Amber signed the new documents, I studied. Her face, still beautiful, still young, but hardened somehow by her own choices. I felt a curious mixture of sadness and relief, knowing this chapter of our lives was closing. Outside on the courthouse steps afterward, Tyler and I stood watching Amber's retreating figure as she hurried to a waiting Uber. "I can't believe I never saw it," Tyler mused, the real her underneath all the charm. "Sometimes we see what we want to see in the people we love," I replied, thinking of my own blind spots over the years. "The important thing is that you're seeing clearly now." He nodded, squinting against the summer sunshine. "So, dinner at my place is still on for Thursday?" "Absolutely," I smiled. "I'll bring Justice to meet you." "Justice? My new cat?" I explained. "He's excellent at judging character. I have a feeling you two will get along just fine." As we walked toward our separate cars, I realized that while this ordeal had cost me financially, it had ultimately given me something far more valuable: a renewed relationship with my son built on honesty instead of obligation, and the self-respect that comes from standing your ground even when it hurts. Some lessons come at a high price. But as I watched Tyler wave before driving away, I knew this one had been worth every penny. The Thursday dinner at Tyler's apartment marked a turning point in our healing relationship. His one bedroom at Madison Estates was modest, but thoughtfully arranged, with none of the designer touches that had been Amber's hallmark. Instead, I found comfortable furniture, well-stocked bookshelves, and a surprisingly elaborate kitchen setup. "I've been teaching myself to cook," Tyler explained, stirring a fragrant pot of homemade bolognese sauce. "Turns out I actually enjoy it when no one's criticizing every ingredient I use." I sat at his small kitchen island, sipping the glass of Merlot he'd poured me. "Your father was the same way. He used to say cooking was like engineering. Just follow the blueprint and make improvements as you go." Tyler smiled, the resemblance to Richard momentarily taking my breath away. I remember his famous Sunday morning pancakes. He'd let me add anything to the batter: blueberries, chocolate chips, even those cinnamon cereals I was obsessed with. And he never measured a single ingredient, I recalled fondly. Drove me absolutely crazy, but they were always perfect. The evening flowed with similar easy reminiscences, carefully avoiding the amber-shaped hole in our conversations. It wasn't until we were washing dishes side by side that Tyler broached more serious territory. "The divorce papers are moving forward," he mentioned, rinsing a plate. "My lawyer thinks it should be finalized within 2 months, assuming Amber doesn't contest anything." "And will she?" I asked, drying the stemware carefully. Tyler shrugged. "She's getting what she wanted: freedom to be with Laura without the messy explanations. And Laura's wealthy enough that the repayment obligation won't significantly impact their lifestyle." "Have you had any contact with her outside the legal proceedings?" "Just once," he admitted. "She came by last week to collect some personal items she'd left behind. It was—" He paused, searching for the right word. "Anticlimactic. Like we were strangers who happened to share some furniture." I squeezed his shoulder sympathetically. "That's often how it goes. One day they're the center of your world, and then suddenly they're just someone you used to know." "Were you this philosophical when you and Dad had rough patches?" Tyler asked, looking genuinely curious. I laughed. "Hardly. Your father would tell you I was a champion plate thrower in our early years, but we always found our way back to each other because we were committed to the hard work of marriage. Not everyone is, and that's okay too." "I keep wondering if I could have done something differently," Tyler confessed, leaning against the counter. "If I'd been more attentive or successful, or whatever it is Amber needed." "That's a dead-end road," I said firmly. "Amber made her choices long before you lost your job. Those choices reflect on her character, not your worth as a husband." He nodded slowly. "Logically, I know that. Emotionally, it's a work in progress. That's why they call it healing," I reminded him. "It takes time." As I prepared to leave, Tyler handed me a check. "For this month's payment to the account," he explained. "Last one from me before the terms of the new agreement kick in." I hesitated before accepting it. "You know, I could just write this off. You've been through enough." "No," he said firmly. "I need to see this through. It's the principle of the thing." I recognized the stubborn set of his jaw, another trait inherited from his father, and knew better than to argue. Instead, I hugged him tightly, whispering, "I'm proud of you," before heading home. The following week brought an unexpected development. I was volunteering at the library, reshelving books in the reference section, when I spotted a familiar figure browsing the legal texts. Laura Ingram, recognizable from her social media photos, stood just a few feet away, her attention focused on a thick volume about property law. My first instinct was to retreat quietly to another section, but something made me stay. Perhaps it was curiosity about the woman who had been at the center of so much chaos in our lives. Or perhaps it was a motherly instinct to size up the person who had helped hurt my son. Before I could decide on a course of action, Laura looked up and caught me watching her. Recognition flickered across her face. Evidently, Amber had shown her my picture at some point. "You're Tyler's mother," she said. It wasn't a question. "I am," I confirmed, keeping my voice neutral. "And you're Laura." An awkward silence stretched between us. Finally, Laura closed her book and approached me, extending her hand. "I know this is incredibly uncomfortable, but I've actually been hoping for a chance to speak with you." Surprised, I shook her hand automatically. "What about?" Laura glanced around the quiet library. "Is there somewhere we could talk privately?" 20 minutes later, we were seated in a corner booth at the cafe across the street. Laura had ordered an elaborate latte that she now cupped between manicured hands, her expression uncharacteristically vulnerable compared to her confident social media persona. "I owe you an apology," she began without preamble. I was aware of what Amber did with your credit card, and I should have insisted she come clean immediately. This candid admission caught me off guard. You knew from the beginning? Laura nodded, shame evident in her downcast eyes. She told me after the first day in Arizona. I was horrified, but she convinced me it was some kind of arrangement you had, that you'd told her she could use the card as needed. And you believed that? I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. Not entirely, Laura admitted. But I wanted to believe her. That's the thing about Amber. She's incredibly persuasive when she wants to be. Don't I know it? I murmured. Laura took a sip of her latte, leaving a perfect lipstick print on the rim. When I found out the truth, that she'd stolen from you, I told her she had to make it right or I'd end our relationship. She swore she was working with Tyler on a repayment plan. She was letting Tyler make all the payments while spending. Lavishly with you, I pointed out. That hardly seems like making it right. I didn't know that until recently, Laura insisted. Amber told me her parents were helping with the payments, and that she was contributing her share from her salon income. I studied her carefully, trying to determine if she was being truthful or performing damage control. Why are you telling me this now? Laura set down her cup with a decisive click. Because I've ended things with Amber, and I wanted you to know. Why? This revelation genuinely surprised me. You broke up? When? 3 days ago, Laura replied. After I discovered she's been stealing from me too. What? Credit cards, cash from my wallet, even some jewelry, Laura elaborated, her professional composure cracking slightly. When I confronted her, she denied everything, even with the evidence right in front of her. It was like watching someone transform into a completely different person. I felt a strange mixture of vindication and pity. That must have been difficult for you. The hardest part was realizing our entire relationship was built on manipulation, Laura said quietly. Every story she told me about Tyler, about their marriage problems, about you, all carefully crafted to paint her as the victim of circumstances rather than the architect of her own chaos. That's Amber's special talent, I acknowledged, creating narratives where she's never at fault. Laura leaned forward earnestly. I wanted you to know that I've made arrangements to cover the remaining balance of what she owes you. Not because I'm legally obligated, but because it's the right thing to do. I blinked in surprise. That's very generous, but unnecessary. Please, Laura insisted. It would help me feel like I've made some amends for my role in all this. I should have seen her sooner. We all wanted to see the best in her, I said, surprising myself with this moment of empathy for the woman across from me. That's not a character flaw, Laura smiled sadly. Maybe not, but trusting blindly might be. As we parted ways outside the cafe, Laura handed me a business card with her private number written on the back. I've already spoken with your lawyer about transferring the funds, but if there's anything else I can do, please don't hesitate to call. I watched her walk away, her confident stride at odds with the vulnerability she'd displayed during our conversation. It struck me then how Amber had managed to leave a trail of wounded people in her wake. All of us initially charmed, then betrayed, and now left to rebuild our understanding of trust and relationship. When I called Tyler that evening to relay this unexpected encounter, his reaction was muted. So Laura's paying off the debt? He summarized after I'd explained everything. That's convenient for Amber. Actually, Laura said Amber doesn't know about this arrangement, I clarified. She wanted to make things right herself. And you believe her? Tyler sounded skeptical. Oddly enough, I do, I replied. She seemed genuinely remorseful. Tyler sighed heavily through the phone. Well, it would simplify the divorce settlement if the debt was cleared. My lawyer's been hitting a wall with Amber's new attorney about including the repayment obligation. New attorney? This was the first I'd heard of it. Yeah, she dumped the last one and hired some aggressive divorce specialist, Tyler explained. Started making all kinds of demands. half my 401k, alimony, even though we were only married 3 years. Can she do that? She can try, Tyler said grimly. My lawyer says her claims are flimsy at best, but it's still dragging out the process. 3 days later, Patricia Henderson confirmed that Laura had indeed transferred the full remaining balance, just over $12,000, into the special account. It's an unusual development, Patricia noted, but it essentially releases Amber from the financial obligation in our agreement. Not from the moral obligation, I pointed out. Patricia's lips curved in a small smile. Unfortunately, there's no legal remedy for character defects. But this does simplify matters considerably. With the debt unexpectedly settled, I found myself at a crossroads. The practical problem had been resolved, but the emotional aftermath lingered, for Tyler especially. He threw himself into work, with an intensity that concerned me, regularly putting in 12-hour days at Collins Tech and rarely socializing outside of office functions. I'm fine, Mom, he insisted when I broached the subject during our weekly Sunday call. Work is actually therapeutic right now. All work and no play makes Tyler a dull boy, I quoted, trying to lighten the mood. Better dull than duped, he retorted, though I could hear a smile in his voice. How about dinner this week? I suggested. I could bring those cinnamon rolls you liked last time. Actually, Tyler began, then hesitated. I kind of have plans for Tuesday night. Something in his tone caught my attention. Oh, work event? Not exactly, he admitted. I have a date. A date? I repeated, trying not to sound too eager for details. That's wonderful. It's just coffee, he cautioned quickly. Nothing serious. She's the new UX designer at work. And we got talking at a team lunch. I'm sure she's lovely, I said, careful not to overwhelm him with questions despite my curiosity. Rain check on dinner then. After we hung up, I sat on my porch swing with Justice purring in my lap, contemplating this new development. Part of me worried it was too soon, that Tyler might not be emotionally ready to date again. But another part recognized this as a healthy step forward. A sign he wasn't letting Amber's betrayal define his future. The irony wasn't lost on me that just as Tyler was taking tentative steps toward moving on, Amber's situation was apparently deteriorating. Through the grapevine of mutual acquaintances, I heard she'd been let go from the salon after cash repeatedly went missing from the register. Without Laura's financial support or a steady income, she'd moved into a shared apartment with 3 roommates in a less desirable part of town. I took no joy in these reports of her downfall, but I couldn't deny a certain poetic justice to it all. Choices, after all, have consequences, a life lesson Amber seemed determined to learn the hard way. 2 weeks after Laura's unexpected debt repayment, I received an even more unexpected visitor. I was deadheading the last of the summer roses when a taxi pulled up in front of my house. Amber stepped out, paid the driver, and stood hesitantly at the edge of my property. Gone were the designer clothes and perfect makeup. The woman approaching my garden looked smaller somehow, dressed in jeans and a plain t-shirt, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Meredith, she called out cautiously. Could I talk to you for a minute? My first instinct was to refuse, to protect the peace I'd finally reclaimed. But curiosity won out. 5 minutes, I agreed, remaining by my rose bushes, pruning shears still in hand. Amber stopped a respectful distance away. I heard Laura paid off the rest of what I owed you. She did, I confirmed neutrally. That wasn't her responsibility, Amber said surprisingly. It was mine. I arched an eyebrow. That's a new perspective for you. She had the grace to look ashamed. I've had a lot of time to think lately about the kind of person I've been, the kind of person I want to be. And what prompted this sudden self-reflection? I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. Rock bottom, I guess. Amber admitted with a humorless laugh. Turns out, burning every bridge eventually leaves you stranded on an island of your own making. Despite myself, I felt a flicker of curiosity. Why are you here, Amber? She took a deep breath. To give you this. She extended an envelope. It's not much. Just the first installment of what I plan to repay Laura for covering my debt to you. I wanted you to know I'm taking responsibility, finally. I made no move to take the envelope. You should be giving this to Laura, not me. She won't see me, Amber explained. Can't blame her, really. And Tyler? I prompted. Are you tormenting him with these visits too? Amber shook her head. The divorce will be final next week. I've dropped all claims, signed everything. He deserves a clean break and a fresh start. I studied her, trying to determine if this apparent transformation was genuine or another manipulation. What do you want from me, Amber? Forgiveness? Absolution? Neither, she replied quietly. You can't forgive someone who hasn't earned it, and I haven't done that yet. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to be better. She placed the envelope on the garden wall between us. I should go. Thank you for listening. As she turned to leave, I found myself asking, Where will you go now? Amber paused. My sister's in Seattle. She's giving me a chance to stay with her while I get back on my feet. A real job, therapy, the works. I hope it helps, I said, surprising myself with the sincerity in my voice. She nodded once before walking away, shoulders straight, despite everything. I watched until she disappeared around the corner, then picked up the envelope. Inside was a money order for $500 and a handwritten note with a simple message. First of many. Thank you for the wake-up call. That evening, as Justice curled up beside me on the sofa, I reflected on the strange journey the past 5 months had been. From the shock of betrayal, to the pain of confrontation, to this unexpected moment of what might be genuine remorse, none of it had unfolded as I could have predicted. I texted Tyler about Amber's visit, careful to present the information without judgment or pressure. His response came quickly. Interesting timing. Hope it's real for her sake. But I'm more interested in telling you about my second date with Elise. Dinner tomorrow? I smiled at the screen, relieved by his healthy perspective. He was neither bitter nor naive, just moving forward with his life, one careful step at a time. The next day, I did something impulsive. I called Laura Ingram and told her about Amber's visit and the money order. I thought you should know, I explained. Not because you need to do anything about it, but because genuine change deserves to be acknowledged, even from a distance. Laura was quiet for a moment before responding. Thank you for telling me. It doesn't change anything between us, but it's good to know. As summer faded into fall, life settled into new patterns. Tyler's relationship with Elise blossomed gradually, built on a foundation of honesty and mutual respect that stood in stark contrast to his marriage to Amber. I received monthly money orders from Seattle, each accompanied by brief updates on Amber's progress in therapy and her new job at a community college. Patricia Henderson and I became friends outside our professional relationship, occasionally meeting for lunch or attending community events together. During one such lunch, she raised her glass in a toast. To justice served, she said, both legally and karmically. I clinked my glass against hers, thinking about all the different forms justice can take: financial restitution, legal consequences, personal growth, and sometimes, most importantly, the freedom to start anew. To second chances, I amended. For all of us. Because in the end, that was the unexpected gift hidden within this painful chapter. The chance to rebuild, to reassess, to redefine what family means. Not based on obligation or blind loyalty, but on respect, honesty, and the courage to stand firm in your own worth. Some lessons come at a high cost, but as I watched the autumn leaves dance across my garden, I knew with certainty that this was one investment that would pay dividends for years to come. 1 year later, the invitation arrived on a crisp October morning, tucked between utility bills and donation requests. A cream-colored envelope with my name written in unfamiliar handwriting. Inside was a simple card announcing the grand opening of Fresh Start Bookstore and Cafe in Seattle, with a personal note on the back. Meredith, if you're ever in Seattle, there's always a cup of coffee waiting for you. Thank you for the hardest lesson I ever needed to learn. Amber. I turned the card over in my hands, marveling at life's unexpected trajectories. According to the infrequent updates that had accompanied her monthly payments, Amber had been working at a bookstore while taking business classes at the community college. Apparently, those efforts had culminated in something tangible. Well, that's certainly a plot twist, I murmured to Justice, who was methodically cleaning his paws on the kitchen counter. He blinked at me non-committally, the feline embodiment of not my circus, not my monkeys. I set the invitation on my refrigerator with a magnet, not committing to anything but not immediately discarding it either. Time had softened the sharper edges of my feelings toward Amber, though I doubted we'd ever have anything resembling a warm relationship. That evening, Tyler and Elise came over for our weekly dinner, bringing a bottle of wine and the easy companionship that had become our new normal. At 33, my son had grown into himself in ways that made my heart swell with pride. The promotion he'd received at Collins Tech 6 months ago had boosted his confidence, but it was his relationship with Elise that had truly transformed him. Unlike Amber's calculated charm, Elise radiated genuine warmth. A brilliant UX designer with a quick wit and remarkably grounded perspective, she complemented Tyler perfectly. Where he could be intense and analytical, she was intuitive and expressive. They balanced each other in ways that reminded me of my relationship with Richard. "Mom, these potatoes are incredible," Tyler enthused, helping himself to seconds. "What did you do differently?" "Roasted garlic and rosemary infused in the cream," I explained, pleased by his appreciation. "Your father's secret weapon for holiday dinners." "Speaking of holidays," Elise segued smoothly, "we wanted to run something by you." The meaningful glance the couple exchanged piqued my curiosity. "Oh?" Tyler set down his fork, suddenly looking nervous. "Well, 2 things, actually. First, I know it's only October, but we'd love for you to join us in Vermont for Christmas this year. Elise's entire family rents this amazing lodge every year. Sledding, snowshoeing, the whole Norman Rockwell experience." "That sounds wonderful," I replied sincerely. "I'd be honored to join you." "Great," Elise beamed. "My parents are going to adore you." "And the second thing?" I prompted, sensing there was more. Another loaded glance between them. Tyler took Elise's hand before turning back to me. "We're engaged," he announced, his face breaking into a grin as Elise extended her left hand to reveal a delicate emerald ring. "We wanted you to be the first to know." A wave of emotion swept through me. Joy, relief, a touch of bittersweet nostalgia for Richard, who should have been here to see his son find happiness. "I couldn't be happier for you both," I managed, rising to embrace them. "When did this happen?" "Last night," Elise explained. "We went hiking up to Multnomah Falls, and Tyler proposed at sunrise. After nearly dropping the ring into the waterfall," Tyler added ruefully. "Turns out proposing on slippery rocks wasn't my most brilliant idea." As they shared the details of their engagement and preliminary wedding plans for the following spring, I found myself studying them with a depth of gratitude that almost overwhelmed me. Had things gone differently, had I not discovered Amber's theft, had I chosen peace over principle, where would Tyler be now? Still trapped in a marriage built on deception? Still struggling to understand why nothing he did was ever enough? "Mom, you okay?" Tyler's voice broke through my reverie. "You looked miles away for a second." Just thinking how life has a way of leading us exactly where we need to go, I said, raising my wine glass. Even if the journey isn't what we expected, to new beginnings. After dinner, as Elise helped me load the dishwasher, she nodded toward the refrigerator where Amber's invitation was displayed. "Is that from Tyler's ex?" she asked casually, though I detected a hint of cautious curiosity. "Yes," I confirmed. "She's opening a bookstore in Seattle." Elise nodded thoughtfully. "Tyler mentioned she's been consistent about making payments to you. That shows some growth, I suppose." "It does," I agreed. "Though I'm not planning to attend her grand opening if that's what you're wondering." Elise smiled. "I wasn't worried. I hope you know I would never do anything like what she did to you. To either of you." I squeezed her arm gently. "I know that, and more importantly, Tyler knows it too. Trust takes time to rebuild after it's been broken, but he's gotten there. We both have," she said, looking toward the living room where Tyler was scrolling through music options. "He told me everything early on, wanted me to understand why certain things might be triggers for him. That kind of honesty takes courage." "It does," I agreed. "And it's the foundation of every relationship worth having." Later that night, after Tyler and Elise had left with promises to call about Vermont trip details, I found myself contemplating how dramatically life had changed in just 18 months. From the shock of Tyler and Amber arriving on my doorstep homeless, to the betrayal of the credit card theft, to the painful confrontations and legal maneuvers, all of it had led here, to a place of unexpected peace and renewal. The next morning, curious about Amber's new venture, I searched online for Fresh Start Bookstore Seattle. Several positive reviews appeared, along with a professionally designed website featuring photos of a cozy cafe adjoining a well-stocked bookstore. Amber appeared in one image, smiling behind the counter, looking more grounded than I'd ever seen her. According to the About Us page, Fresh Start employed people transitioning from difficult circumstances, former addicts, previously incarcerated individuals, and others needing a second chance in the workforce. A portion of the proceeds supported a local women's shelter. "Well, I'll be damned," I murmured, genuinely surprised by this apparent transformation. On impulse, I sent a brief email to the store's contact address. "Amber, congratulations on your new business venture. The store looks lovely, and the mission behind it is commendable. While I won't be able to attend the opening, I appreciate the invitation and wish you success in this new chapter. Meredith." I didn't expect a response, but one arrived within hours. "Meredith, thank you for your kind words. They mean more than you might imagine. My therapist suggested that making amends isn't just about repaying financial debts, but about creating something positive from the wreckage of past mistakes. Fresh Start is my attempt to do that. I understand why you won't attend the opening, but the invitation remains open indefinitely. Whether it's next month or years from now, there will always be a welcome here for you. Tyler mentioned you've met his new girlfriend. I'm genuinely happy he's found someone worthy of his kindness. Please know I harbor no ill will toward either of you, only gratitude for the harsh wake-up call I needed." With respect, Amber, I read the email twice, struck by its apparent sincerity. The old Amber had been a master manipulator, carefully crafting her words for maximum effect. This message felt different, more grounded, less calculated. Whether this represented genuine change or a more sophisticated level of manipulation, only time would tell. 2 weeks later, Patricia Henderson invited me to join her for lunch at an upscale restaurant downtown. "We're celebrating," she announced, as the waiter poured sparkling water into our glasses. "I've just been nominated to fill Judge Harrison's position when he retires next month." "Patricia, that's marvelous!" I exclaimed, "though I should start calling you Your Honor to practice." She laughed, her typically reserved demeanor relaxing. "Please don't. I get enough of that from the junior associates already kowtowing in anticipation." As we enjoyed our meal, the conversation turned to my family's recent developments. Tyler's engagement is wonderful news, Patricia said. I met Elise briefly at the charity auction last month. She seems like a perfect match for him. She truly is, I agreed. And the prenuptial agreement you helped them draft puts everyone's mind at ease. Not that I expect they'll ever need it. Patricia nodded approvingly. Better to have protections in place when they're not needed than to need them and not have them. That's a lesson Tyler learned the hard way. We all did, I acknowledged. Speaking of lessons learned, Patricia continued, I ran into Laura Ingram at a fundraiser last weekend. She mentioned that Amber has paid back nearly half of what Laura contributed to settle your claim. This surprised me. She didn't mention that in her emails, just that she's been making regular payments. According to Laura, Amber insisted on repaying the full amount, even though Laura told her it wasn't necessary. Patricia studied me over her glass. People do change occasionally, Meredith. So it seems, I conceded. Though I maintain a healthy skepticism, Patricia smiled knowingly. As you should. Trust is earned, not given freely after betrayal. But it's worth noting the effort. After lunch, I found myself walking through the downtown arts district, where the autumn chill had driven most tourists inside. A small gallery caught my attention with a vibrant display of metal sculptures, abstract figures that somehow conveyed motion despite their static medium. Beautiful, aren't they? The gallery owner approached as I studied a particularly striking piece. The artist uses reclaimed materials, old car parts, industrial scraps, transforms them into something entirely new. The alchemy of second chances, I murmured, thinking of Amber's bookstore, of Tyler's engagement, of my own journey from betrayal to a hard-won peace. Exactly, the owner beamed, delighted by my interpretation. That's actually the name of the VI collection, Second Chances. The artist believes everything deserves an opportunity for transformation. I ended up purchasing a small sculpture, a bird taking flight, crafted from what appeared to be old keys and clockwork pieces. The owner carefully wrapped it while explaining the artist's background. He was formerly incarcerated, learned metalworking, through a prison arts program. Now he teaches workshops for at-risk youth. Amazing what can happen when someone decides to create something positive from difficult circumstances. The parallels were almost too perfect to be coincidence. I placed the wrapped sculpture in my bag, thinking it would make an appropriate engagement gift for Tyler and Elise, a symbol of resilience and renewal that encompassed all our experiences. That evening, as autumn rain tapped gently against my windows, I curled up in Richard's old reading chair with Justice purring on my lap and began composing a letter I'd been contemplating for weeks. Dear Amber, your most recent payment arrived yesterday, marking 15 consecutive months of your commitment to making amends. While the financial restitution is important, I've been more struck by the consistency, the steady effort to rebuild what was broken. I've seen the website for Fresh Start and read about your mission to support others in transition. It appears you've found purpose in creating opportunities for people facing their own crossroads. There's wisdom in that approach. Tyler is engaged to a wonderful woman named Elise. They're planning a spring wedding in Portland's Rose Garden. He's truly happy now, in a relationship built on mutual respect and honesty. I share this not to cause pain, but because I believe you genuinely wish him well. Life rarely follows the paths we anticipate. 18 months ago, I never imagined I'd be writing this letter, acknowledging your efforts to transform your mistakes into meaningful change. Yet here we are. I won't be attending your store opening, but I might visit Seattle in the new year. If I do, perhaps that cup of coffee you offered might be a small step toward a different kind of relationship. Not family as once intended, but two people who have learned difficult lessons and grown from them. With cautious optimism, Meredith, I sealed the letter, addressed the envelope, but didn't immediately place it with the outgoing mail. Some decisions benefit from the clarity of morning light. 3 days later, an unexpected call came from Gregory Thompson at Collins Tech. After exchanging pleasantries, he came to the point of his call. "Meredith, we're expanding our community outreach program, particularly focusing on technology education for underserved communities. Tyler mentioned you'd recently retired from teaching high school mathematics." "After 32 years," I confirmed, "though I still tutor occasionally." "Would you consider joining our advisory board?" Greg asked. "We need someone with classroom experience to help shape effective educational initiatives. It's a part-time commitment, quarterly meetings, some curriculum review." The offer caught me by surprise. After Richard's death, I'd gradually withdrawn from many professional connections, focusing inward during the grieving process. This opportunity represented a chance to re-engage with the world in a meaningful way. "I'd be honored," I told him, "though I'll need to brush up on current educational technology." "That's exactly why we need you," Greg assured me. "You bring the pedagogical expertise. Our tech team provides the digital know-how. Together, we can create something impactful." As winter approached, life took on a rhythm I hadn't experienced since before Richard's illness. Purposeful, forward-moving, unexpectedly rich. The advisory board work challenged me intellectually. Weekly dinners with Tyler and Elise nourished my heart. My widows group provided community and understanding. Even Justice had settled into his role as household companion, greeting me at the door each evening with dignified affection. On a particularly cold December morning, as I prepared to leave for a meeting at Collins Tech, I noticed Amber's invitation still attached to my refrigerator. On impulse, I removed it and placed it in my desk drawer alongside the sealed letter I'd written but never sent. Some chapters aren't meant to be completely closed, I realized. They remain slightly ajar, allowing for the possibility of revision without erasing the original story. Later that week, I found myself in a jewelry store searching for a Christmas gift for Elise. As I browsed the display cases, a familiar voice called my name. I turned to find Laura Ingram examining engagement rings in a nearby section. "Meredith, what a lovely coincidence," she greeted me warmly. "Christmas shopping?" I asked, nodding toward the rings. Laura blushed slightly. "Actually, yes, but not in the way you might think. I'm helping my brother select a ring for his girlfriend." We chatted amiably for a few minutes, the awkwardness of our history now softened by time and perspective. "I received an invitation to Amber's bookstore opening," Laura mentioned as we prepared to part ways. "Did you?" "I did," I confirmed. "Though I won't be attending." Laura nodded understandingly. "I'm not going either, but I did send a small gift. A vintage cash register I've had in storage. Seemed fitting somehow." "That was thoughtful," I remarked, genuinely surprised. "We all deserve second chances," Laura said simply, "though not necessarily second relationships." Her perspective echoed my own evolving feelings, recognition of positive change without obligation to reinstate broken trust. As Christmas approached, I finally mailed the letter to Amber, along with a small book on business management I thought might be useful for her new venture. Not quite forgiveness, but acknowledgement, a middle path between harboring resentment and pretending the past hadn't happened. On Christmas Eve, surrounded by Elise's boisterous family in their Vermont lodge, I found a quiet moment to call Patricia and wish her happy holidays. "How's the judicial robe fitting?" I teased. "Surprisingly comfortable," she laughed, "though the responsibility weighs more heavily than the garment." After exchanging updates, Patricia asked a question that gave me pause. "Looking back on everything that happened with Amber, would you have done anything differently?" I gazed out at the snow-covered landscape, considering her question carefully. "I would have trusted my instincts sooner," I finally replied. But the fundamental decisions, standing firm on principle, insisting on accountability, balancing consequences with compassion, those I wouldn't change. That's wisdom talking, Patricia observed, the kind that only comes through difficulty. That night, as festive chaos swirled around me, Elise's brothers arguing good-naturedly about football, her parents telling embarrassing childhood stories, Tyler laughing more freely than I'd seen in years, I felt a profound sense of rightness. Not because everything was perfect, but because everything was authentic. My DIL had used my credit card for her vacation, and I had used my lawyer to cancel her shopping spree. But the real story wasn't about credit cards or lawyers or even betrayal. It was about choices and consequences, about the courage to demand respect, about the long, complicated journey from bitterness to a peace that accommodates both boundaries and grace. As Tyler caught my eye across the room and raised his glass in a silent toast, I realized that some lessons, even the most painful ones, become unexpected gifts when they lead us exactly where we need to be. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.